Whoop, whoop, whoop. Happy Friday, guys. How you
Yeah.
doing?
Ooh, good man. A bit of a roller coaster this week, I think. Positive, but it's a very different scene that I'm in from when I saw you guys last.
Why? Where did you go?
I just went to like just some little place, but a lot warmer. A lot
You
warmer.
keep that quiet.
I'm like,
Well,
why?
a lot warmer, a lot warmer than Nottingham. It's
Yeah,
pretty easy
it's
these days.
horrible and miserable today. Like if anyone can.
No, tell me about it. Is it? The UK is horrible and miserable.
Yeah, it's
How that
really. I'm
happened?
sure you're so shocked, aren't you?
It's freezing at the moment here.
No, don't be funny.
What's
Ian
up,
is here.
Ian?
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Oh, Taz is in the house. Ian's in the house.
Taz is in the house.
From Leeds to New York in 2 clicks. Took to that. Bang bang.
How was your week, guys? Let's go into it from
I
1 to
would
10.
say I've had a really good week, but
Mhm.
the events have probably, I'm going to assume, I'm going to make an assumption here, for parts of America was probably a bad week. I'm
Ooh.
just going to state that. You know what I mean? But yeah, good week,
Let's
man.
Yeah, that probably let's not get there. Oh, if he's here,
Yeah,
if you you're not supposed to
it
crash
worked.
some tickets. No, she's always listening. Yes, I'm happy.
Oh, Mark's in the Shire.
Mark is here. The Shy is back.
But
How
I'm
was your week, Ash?
Yeah, it started off a bit slow, but yeah, it a little bit up and down actually, but yeah, it's turned out really well. The worst part was yesterday when I went to get like 3 jabs,
Why did
3
you do
jabs because I'm going to India, so I was like
Mhm.
out. But yeah, I had some.
That's gonna be worth it. When are you going?
Gonna go in about 3 weeks now.
that?
Nice.
Yeah, can't wait.
We're doing a live from there. Is that what we're doing?
I don't know.
If I can do it, you can do it.
I'm not sure actually. I've not checked that, but yeah, we'll have to.
Oh, Mark's on
We
a
have
solid
some.
11. Mark's on a solid 11. He's always
Well done, Mark.
I'd
Well
love
done,
to
Mark.
see a bad week with Mark. Like I'm about a 9. Put your scores in the chat, guys. Come on.
Put your scores in the chat. Tell us where
9.
you're from, and tell us if you're watching this live or a recorded version later on, because we're now actually streaming on LinkedIn and YouTube as well. So yeah, let us know.
Yeah, so Martin's need to tell us about his week because this guy's like
He's been busy.
It's been great. It's been great. Good week. Good week. We're getting some interesting leads. We had some amazing conversation. Next week, we're going to be in Malta for one of our clients' exhibition in Sigma. 30,000 people event. Mad, huge. So, and that's a first for us as well, being somewhere like this big with our booth. So we're going to be the small shark among the way bigger fishes. But
coincidence in the first time you've never invited me. Is that because like you don't?
Yeah, it was deliberate because we wanted to put a good image. So it's good. I think a solid 9. Busy but good busy. Good. Guys, let's get into it because I can't wait to get into this one as always. As always, it's a pleasure to have way smarter people than us, which is easy.
Yeah. So this topic is about the journey you take to break into the creative industry, and there's definitely not one way. And contrary to popular belief, you don't have to know the right people. You don't have to take the traditional route. And today we got the special guest who is going to share his journey that did exactly that, not the traditional route, a journey of thinking and doing things differently, one of resilience and one of thriving, I guess, as an outsider, a creative outsider. So yeah, his journey started over 20 years ago. He worked on some of the biggest brands like Smirnoff, Guinness, PepsiCo. His offices in London and New York. He is the co-founder of an independent brand design agency called Vault 49. It's a pleasure and honor to have him with us today. Please welcome John Glasgow to the Water Cooler.
Here he is. A literal G, a real G.
What's up, John? Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So I take it you're in the New York office.
Yeah.
In New York, yes. Yeah, this is currently where I lived. I've lived for the last 20 years. Yeah, it's home to me now. Still feel like a British man in New York, but it's definitely home for me now.
How often do you get back to London? And with obviously the office being here, and you're from London.
Yeah, it used to be quite often. especially pre-COVID. I would say every couple of months, really, every kind of 2 to 3 months, I'll be back in there with the London studio or kind of on client-based work. But I pared back a little bit because I've got a little boy as well. So the missus is like,
congratulations.
Thank you. He's about 2.5 now. He's crazy, as boys are, as you can attest to this. But yeah, it doesn't allow me to kind of journey over to London as much. But I still am over there at least like 3 times a year.
Yeah. They keep you busy at that age.
Well, they do.
Yeah. Mine's 16, and it feels like I'm still not over the time when
you're keeping her busy now, ain't it?
Oh man, I'm at opposite ends. So I've got a 15-year-old. When she was 13 or so, I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm like, yeah, my life's coming back. She's kind of like hanging out with her mates more and all of this stuff. Yeah, but pulled right back in.
I think that's showing our age now, man. Like I've seen her grow up. It's crazy. Yeah. So let's get stuck into that then. Let's start. I think so part of that journey, right?
Yeah, Mark's saying he went through snuck in while no one was looking through the back door. I'm guessing his meaning. So John, take us to that like 20 years ago, like, because I think this is important and it'll probably set the stage for the rest of the conversation. Did you feel like you were an outsider when you first started then, like in the industry, and can you like tell us a little bit more about that then?
Yeah, definitely. It's crazy to think we're talking about age, and it's crazy to think how the industry was kind of operating back then to how it's operating now. But yeah, to go back to those early days. So
it was black and white back then, right?
It was black and white. Yeah. Macs weren't even a thing then. Yeah, you were cutting everything down.
Forget, John, like he's the baby of this group, so yeah, man. He's a digital boy, man. We're analog. You know what I mean?
I'm in the transition. I'm not a digital. Actually, can before you go, I want to tell you this joke that really hurt me and make me lose my sleep this week. I went to like on a startup presentation and. I explained about my LinkedIn journey and everything. And then this one of the startuppers I was coaching came to me and said, "Oh, Martin, I'm also an influencer, but I'm influencer on younger platforms like TikTok and Instagram." And I was like, okay, thanks for that. Sorry, close.
All good. So yeah, the first form of Vault 49 was a student project. It was I was in the screen print rooms. I went to a college called London College of Printing, and they had screen print facilities. And the reason why I was in those screen print rooms, because at that time I wanted to see my work as big as possible. And I couldn't afford to go and kind of use the Epson printer in the kind of the computer center because it was like £30 a pop to do like an A1 print. So I was like, okay, screen printing allows me to kind of, it's free. I learn a craft and it allows me to get my work as big as possible. And I met my business partner literally on the next screen bed to me, kind of admiring each other's work. And we started to collaborate. And that first form of that collaboration was actually going out, creating a series of designs that was inspired by our individual journeys, what was happening in popular culture at the time. And the first forms of that work was street art. So we would super hustle. We would be students during the day. We would be screen printing into the early evening. And then at nighttime, we would go out into the streets of London and just kind of fly poster around London just to see how people would interact with the work. So and on any given night, we would kind of maybe rock up to about 4 or 5 different locations. We would find spaces where we could just really kind of take over large spaces and walls with a series of about 8 different kind of illustrations and typographic designs we had done. And we would cover the walls from floor to the ceiling as wide as we could go. And by the time we would finish kind of our kind of route around kind of places in East London, we would come back to the first place because like it was kind of morning now, or people were coming out of clubs and seeing the work, and we would just kind of see how they would interact with the work. And that was it, purely for the love of and the joy. There was no branding on there. It was a college project that we just kept on building on. But one evening we stopped off. Where was it? It was in Old Street. We stopped off by a chip shop, and there was a derelict building next door to it. So we did what we did. We covered it from floor to ceilings, covered the windows and the doors. thought nothing of it. I get a call 2 days later from Dazed and Confused magazines that you guys will probably know, but for the audience, this was like their photographer was ranking. They were kind of lifestyle, music, fashion, film, all captured what was going on, especially at a street level. We had covered their buildings, and they absolutely loved what we had done and the bravery and the boldness behind it, and they wanted to meet the artists that had done it. So they invited us down to their space, explained that they had cut their way to get into their offices that day, and basically said, could you do what you did on the outside of our space on the inside? And that was pretty much the birth of what we were doing. It was this hyper local expression of two kind of artists using street art as an expression to put the work out there. And that's from that exhibition. And I think we were still like in our last year, was still like 6 months before we were graduating, but commissions just started to come to roll through because they invited the industry down, and we had tapped into something that culturally, something that people were connecting with. And that was it. That was the spark.
It's insane now, like it was guerrilla marketing before this term guerrilla even came around. I remember walking to football one day talking about this to you. It was insane. Like, just do something for shits and giggles, and next minute you're like,
that's it. Well, this is what I liked about that story is like there was no agenda really, apart from just getting feedback from people just for what the work that you've done. You're not selling anything, you're not doing anything. Like there's no call to actions or anything like that. It's just purely get feedback from the people on the street.
Yeah.
And it's funny, we draw on those experience of how the kind of company operates. That first understanding and tapping into something that kind of at a hyper local level, at a street level, getting people to interact with it. It's how we still try to connect with brands now, but kind of leaning back into that first experience. Again, we were still students at a time, but we were kind of thrown into, fast forward 12 months later, we had graduated at that point, and we're working now on huge, big global campaigns. And it was just such a kind of a switch that we just kind of hustled and put our heads down and just like rode this wave. We didn't know when it was going to end. My first thought was, oh, this is it. I'm just going to be like some form of kind of my output was screen printing. I was using that medium to kind of really dictate the style and how I created and how I created typography. The limitation of color dictated the illustration style. It dictated the textures, the imperfections, the mistake really dictated the look and feel. And I was just going to be selling screen prints for the rest of my life. But obviously the universe had a different plan, and now I'm here in New York with a team of about 30 people here and about 15 in London.
Amazing.
We've got a comment here, and this is quite apt as actually, and obviously not on this episode. So yeah, there isn't, and we definitely need more women representation. But we'll dig into that because that's what you're all about, isn't it? Like that is, I mean, looking at your website as well, like 70% of the people that work at your agency, like women, right? And
same here at Factory as well.
Yeah. And I can't see who that is because it's come up as anonymous, but
we had some terrific women.
And we've got a few more coming.
We had some terrific women as well. So if you go on YouTube.
Yeah, so carry this on then, John. Let's walk it. I don't know how far you want to go into how you got into New York, but in fact,
that's an interesting one. Actually.
I know this. That's why I'm asking you.
Yeah. This was. I'll go back to this. At the time, we had a real kind of hustle mentality. When I say hustle mentality, I think naturally, if you come from like a working class background, you have that innate in you. You hustle to kind of like, whether it's to make ends meet or whatnot. But tapping into that hustle mentality, which is focused on a passion and a drive, that's what we had at that time. We were, as I said, we were students, we were screen printers, we were fly posters, street artists, expressing ourselves. And this was like day in, day out, week after week, we was just hustling because you tap into something you are really passionate about and you drive. And that just kind of continued. I think I mentioned 12 months later from being a student to actually forming Vault 49. was established now as a company, and we were getting commissions by all the big advertising agencies at that point. But we wanted more. We had a dip into New York. We had a project we were doing for Express, and they invited us. So Express, almost like the Next of UK, a fashion, it's kind of a high street fashion company out here. And they invited us to do a bunch of these kind of six of these hang tags, and they were paying like $5,000 a hang tag. And at that time, we were like just 6 months out of college, like shit, we've made it. Like this is loads of money. And then they did a pop-up event in New York, and they were like, we want the artists to come and be there and experience it and do interviews and whatnot. And at this event, there's people like people from the hip hop industry, people from the fashion industry there. So we're kind of thrown into New York culture through that event. And we got back to the UK, and we was just like, how do we get to New York? We need to get there. It's buzzing over there. So super naive, and I feel like these naive approaches have really kind of turned into success. We called up the American embassy, and we said, hey, what's the company that has the most success in getting visas if they want to get out to the US? They replied to us, this is the most bizarre question. We've never had a question like this.
Strategic though, bro. I love it.
But I don't think there was no strategy behind it, but it was just, again, the hustle and the bravery. Just why not? And they said, well, we know that this company comes through our door, so we'll give you their contact details, we'll give you their name. And we called them up, and they was like, yeah, sure, we can help you. So here's like 2 guys, one from Huddersfield, one from West London, still kind of like tapped into kind of street culture. We turn up there, and they're just shocked. We walk into this office building in central London, and they're just shocked of who's these guys wearing kind of baggy clothes and with all big logos over it, fur hood like Max and whatnot.
Sounds like Wes.
Yeah, pretty much.
Exactly, pretty much Wes. Pretty much they're used to people coming in with suits and ties, and you've got these 2 young guys that come in, and we're like, we want to get to New York. They were like, okay. There was a bit of a loophole. So what they said was, all right, we can get you on this visa called the H-1B visa. And what you have to do is set up a company in the US. You don't throw any money that you have. So thank you to Express at that time that gave us about 30K. So we threw all of our money into a US bank account. And then we had to kind of have an office, which was a PO box. So just a location which had a small box where letters could be sent. And then we had to advertise the roles for Vault 49 founders in a local newspaper. So we chose a really small newspaper in upstate New York. And then we applied for our job. So I ended up hiring Jonathan, and he ended up hiring me. That's what got us over to New York.
That's sick.
So good.
I love it. But like what I found amazing, and I've known you for years, obviously, but you mentioned like that like working class background that gives you that drive. And without knowing it, and you probably worked this out, but like even like you and how you approached work and your passion at university or college, it gave you a drive to just go and do it. Just forget like all the worries, the problems, the backlash, the shit that we could get into. Let's just go and do it. And you find that sets you up, like, especially when you get to New York. You're there. I've been there. You've got this hustle mentality that you're willing to take risk. You're willing to outmaneuver or find ways around shit. Like, and that example you just gave there, whether you realize it or not, strategically you've gone, right, my odds are better if I reach out and say, right, what company takes the most, because then my odds will improve. You know what I mean? Whether you realize that or not, like that strategy, that's like, I'm going to find a way in here. Do you know what I mean? And totally. I have literally the same mindset, and I don't know where, and I know Martin does, and definitely Ash. Like, we get a problem, we're like, right, how do we get through that? Like, and that comes from our roots, right? How we approach life, let alone work.
And I think it's like end goal. It's not just given to you, so you'll try anything to figure it out. Like, and the more kind of weird ways you do things, you don't even think they're weird. You're just think
it's natural.
That's a way in. That's a way in. That's how it's going to happen. Yeah. You've got the bigger picture in your hand. Now let's reverse engineer that. Like, how do we get there?
Yeah, exactly.
Martin seen me in some mad shit, like in Cyprus when we're trying to hack the all-inclusive wristbands. And I'd found a video on YouTube using the nail file, like how to get the backs off. And before even Ash had landed, we'd found 2 wristbands. We were trying to hack it through. In the end, Martin was like, "Just give up, Wes." And I was like, "No, come on, bro. Like, there's a way through this. Like, we can do it."
I honestly think it's a superpower. It's a superpower coming from working class, because we, Ash, you touched on it. We're not, those opportunities are not necessarily there. We don't potentially have someone who's going to kind of open the door for us to give us those opportunities. So you've got to find those opportunities yourself. You know, people. Another way of talking about it is like, you know, being lucky. But again, I think it's creating your own luck. I go back to that moment of covering that building. If we didn't, if we weren't out there putting yourself out there, those opportunities wouldn't turn up. And
what if, isn't it?
Whereas you hit the nail on the head, is something that doesn't leave you. Like
I'm still the same. Like,
exactly, that hustle's still there. You're probably still counting the pennies like I am. And
I have to. I give myself a goal, like, but every month it's like, you know, my partner John, he calls me like the hunter founder. He called me this morning on a call. Like, I'll just go and find it. Like, I don't know how I do it, but like, I'll just go and find it. I don't know how I do it, but it's just like, it's happened. It's there. You know what I mean? But anyway, like, let's track into like. So the interesting conversation we've had in the past is like when you first experienced. So you've made it in New York. You've got in the room or in the boardroom. This is where kind of like this outsider bit starts to play into the narrative, right?
Yeah. So it's interesting because I talked about Vault 49 started off as street artists, and then when we formed, it was myself and Jonathan, maybe for the first 4, maybe 5 years. We only actually spent a year and a half in London once we graduated, and then we found ourselves moving from a half a bedroom in kind of on the border of Camberwell and Peckham to half a bedroom in the Lower East Side. Oh, actually, no, tell a lie. We had progressed to a full bedroom, so it was the spare bedroom was our office in New York. And back then, there was no Zoom. No. We met, our clients were advertising agencies. So, they would kind of come up with maybe the strategy, the big idea, and say, this is the agency or the company or the artist that are going to bring that story to life for you. So for the first maybe like 6 to 8 years, Vault 49 was almost like hired guns for advertising agencies. And we rarely met clients at that point. It might have been an initial conversation on a phone call, and then everything was email after that. So we were super comfortable. We were doing our things, heads down, hustling. We were doing long days, 14-hour days, working weekends. It's that we were still in that startup mentality for a long time. We started to then grow into an office space, and then we created an art collective. We grew to about 16 people, all kind of pulling in different talent from. We realized quite early that we're great as a collaboration. Look, Vault 49 was born on collaboration, and why don't we extend that collaboration to it? Collaborate with the best 3D artists. Let's collaborate with bringing a graffiti artist, a digital artist. So we just kept on expanding, and again, we were still this hired guns for agency. So super comfortable. Was just kind of coasting at that point, and I would just sit down with a lot of people that I got on with, very like-minded. But then recession hits, 2008, 2009, and we're like, okay, we lose about 75% of revenue, literally from one day to the next. Advertising agencies just kind of really kind of cut back on all of their spends. Projects that were promised disappeared. So then we have to rethink our strategy about, okay, we're a small cog in a big kind of machine here. How do we kind of change that so that we're dealing with the decision makers? And that was like reshaping Vault 49 to be a creative agency. So in that transition, going direct to brands, we went from all of a sudden having a safe space into, okay, now I need to kind of be out in New York. Now I need to be in meeting rooms. Now I need to sit down with brand teams and start to discuss, what their key brand assets, how they're building equity over how they show up across different touch points brilliantly. I'm talking about consumers. I'm talking about the strategic positioning, brand personas, and all of this stuff. I'm sat with brand managers. I'm sat with competitor agencies, and now I'm like, okay, my experience as a designer, my experience as a thinker and an innovator is now different, because now I'm in these spaces where I'm feeling like an outsider. I'm the only person that's maybe coming from a working class background, and I'm the only person of color walking into these spaces, and all of a sudden that confidence and that the balloon pops a little bit, and I'm like, okay. To give you an example, I remember vividly one moment they were talking about, how do we bring this brand persona to life? What's that celebrity character that really kind of represents this brand? And they're all kind of referring to, maybe indie pop artists and all these artists I've never heard of. And I'm thinking, shit, I go home and I'm listening to Buju Banton at home. And so how am I gonna add value in these spaces?
Yeah.
And that was a big struggle and a long struggle to really think about, really to build up my confidence, really build up my voice in that space, and understand that my experiences actually do add value. Unfortunately, at that time, my references, I felt that my references and my experiences weren't going to resonate, because the consumer that they were targeting weren't the ones that spoke like me, that looked like me. So that was a challenge at the time. I think that's shifted on a lot now. There's still a lot to be done.
Well, it's hugely relatable, that what you've just said, massively. So on that note as well, so how did you feel like you had to conform, or did you resist? Like, how did you just, was it a point where you like accepted that you are different, you have a different way of thinking, you have a different background, and actually this is a superpower, or was it a gradual thing, and did you fight that conformity?
Yeah, it was gradual, and I think it was a fight. So the initial point was to shrink down and almost like disappear in those spaces. And as much as I was the only person that I felt come in and representing my experiences and my background, a lot of those barriers I think I had put up myself in my own mind, because I was obviously invited into that space because they saw something in myself and they saw something in our agency that they felt we could bring value in. But so they opened the door for me to be and add that voice. But I think I then extended my own kind of barriers, and part of that would have been just naturally, okay, now shifting from being close to the brands, you're involved in wider conversations, and you're higher in the journey of a project now. You're not at that kind of more executional stage. You're at that thinking and your stage as well. So there was a part of that, learning that and absorbing that. But once I kind of felt confident, and when it got into that creative stage, that's when I felt, okay, I know what I'm talking about here. I can talk towards how you can translate that idea into something that's going to resonate, that's going to disrupt, that's going to create an impact. But it was this gradual journey of kind of building that confidence, breaking down the barriers that I felt the room was giving me, but also the barriers that I built up myself. And that was a long journey. I'm talking about, I'm probably still on that journey. That confidence is still growing. But, the relationships get a bit easier when you've had more of a long-term relationship with the client. So you build that rapport with them, you build that confidence. So it was a constant kind of back and forth, one step forward, one step back, one step forward, one step back. But it got to a point to where I felt like I had to stand up, and I had to be brave for the company to push forward, for us to unlock new revenues, for us to kind of start to build and grow a strategic team. I had to start kind of knocking on these doors, so I had to step out of that comfort zone, and sometimes feel like, all right, I might be the first in some of these spaces, but you know what? If that means that it's going to allow my team to then come in behind me, then so be it. And it's quite funny that I talk about I was able to kind of break down those barriers with clients that I started to feel comfortable with and build those relationships with. It was a whole new thing when I had to then continue to promote Vault 49 globally. And then now I had to kind of think about, well, how do I build my own brand within Vault 49? How do I help spread the message? Because we need more business. We need to lean into new categories. That means I need to get my face out there, and I need to talk about our point of view on how we tap into culture, how we bring our point of view to life from a brand. And that was a whole, I almost like got to a point where, okay, I feel comfortable in my own skin now. I can operate in these circles. And then there was something happened at that point, 2020, Black Lives Matter happened. And all of a sudden, there was a new set of barriers that came into place, because now I had to kind of, dare I say, and now I had a newfound form of fame thrown at me. And I had to now kind of represent and embrace that.
So what did you do around on that period then?
So it was a lot of kind of, so to unpack that a little bit more, so 2020 happens. We're dealing with COVID, and then we've also got all of the atrocities happening specifically in the US, but very familiar across multiple communities globally. But, you know, almost like we were all paused at that moment, and we were all focused on our phones and the TV, and we all kind of witnessed what was happening. We couldn't hide it. There was no noise happening around it, because we were all kind of stuck to our devices, seeing it happen. And all of a sudden, I'm sure this happened across adjacent industries, but all of a sudden the creative industry kind of like looked at themselves in the mirror and said, we can do more. Yeah. So I went from being kind of like Vault 49 almost being like this agency which was kind of under the radar, doing good work for brands, both big and small brands, to okay, we want you to talk on this. We want you to do thought pieces. We want you to do speaking engagements. We want you to talk about your experience. And it was almost like I met that with resilience at first. I was just like, no, I'm not going to do that. Why all of a sudden? Because you realize that there are kind of a handful of great creative people of color in the industry all of a sudden, because of this is going on. But then I quickly realized, you know what? Representation is so important. You know, when someone can see someone from their culture up there, you then almost plant a seed in their mind that, okay, someone else has done it, so I can see myself.
Exactly. Ambition, right? It gives drive, sure.
So it's for the others, not for yourself.
Exactly. So, you know, I've got my ego kind of out of the way and was like, you know what, let me just embrace this, but use this platform to really kind of be authentic and talk about my experience.
Yeah, it's a fine line. It's a fine line, and it's also a heavy responsibility to be representing a lot of people who are also not exactly the same, and that's part of the battle, right? Isn't it? Like, so there's that responsibility there, but then there's also, like you mentioned, the opportunity, and like, representation does matter. And even though I'm part of that voice, it's still a big part. And that's hugely important. So I'm glad you went forward with that way of thinking. So I wanted to talk to you also about creating these safe spaces for people that come after you, because I know you and your agency are quite, from what I've read and seen, you know, you do a lot in terms of mentoring, maybe just by the things that you do. And there's your agency, if I'm correct, is one of the founding partners and creative lead for something called The Swap. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Yes, and I can definitely speak towards that. Just before I dive into it, talking about kind of those safe spaces, you know, Vault 49 and Jonathan and I had created that safe space. We were born out of diversity, because here's you know, a black guy and a white guy coming together to actually form this kind of this creative journey that we're on. So our reference point, or kind of the talent we pull, look for at Vault 49, is definitely not a traditional way of pulling that talent. We pull people and we bring people together, not because of the color of their skin, but people who are super talented. But we're very mindful of not to kind of be very look in one space. We're very mindful not to kind of like, okay, what's the next generation of talent coming in? Let's go to the latest kind of degree shows and look at what they're doing and pull the best talent out of those spaces. We open up the aperture to think about, well, where are those people who haven't actually gone through the educational process? What circles are they operating in as well? And that was a challenge in itself. There's a couple of great programs out there like D&AD Shift. There was another one formed by a friend of mine called the One School. And there was the program that you're touching on now, which was called The Swap, that we formed 10 years ago now. So to dig into that a little bit deeper, so The Swap, again, was born out of my personal experience of being frustrated of kind of being the only person of color in these rooms. And but as I said, I would always make sure that, okay, if I'm the only one there, I'm bringing a couple of people with me. So whether it's one of our Mexican illustrators, or whether it's our Asian American artists, or whether it's Donna, our client manager, who's Caribbean and Leeds. Where's your like that?
Everywhere you go.
Yeah, or whether it's Lucy, who's from France, making sure that we're bringing some of those different diverse representative people in the door with us. But it was based on that frustration of, I'm not seeing enough people of color when I go into these spaces. So what can we do? And when I started to kind of unpack that frustration as well, I was introduced to a guy called Lawrence Latte, who's kind of an entrepreneur in himself, who's kind of dabbles. He lives within the creative space, and it shows up in different ways through journalism, through education. And as we kind of like dug into it and unpacked it through conversations, we realized that it really has to start at grassroots. We really need to plant that seed quite early. So we thought, well, what if we were to form this exchange program where we're pulling people who identify as an ethnic minority that come from a low-income environment and giving them experience of travel and taking them out of one city and bringing them to another city where they collaborate with similar like-minded people, similar people who come from that similar background and experience. So he had connections with Jay-Z and the Jay-Z Foundation, Sean Carter Foundation. And he started a conversation literally with Jay-Z, and he was like, yeah, speak to my people. And then that first exchange happened to where we brought some students out of the UK, a handful of students, brought them to the US, got them to collaborate with some students from the Sean Carter Foundation, and Bolt 49 was able to provide a creative brief for them to work on that journey. And that was the first birth of it. And then the next year was like, all right, let's do that again. From that first experience, we felt that we should document this. There's some real rich conversation, some real growth we're starting to see from these individuals that actually joined this journey for us. So we started to document it. And then fast forward to now, we're in our 10th year. We now tag on brands to it. We work out of Chicago, Boston, and New York. About 6 years ago, the Obama Foundation got wind of what we were seeing. They saw the documentation, the behind-the-scenes footage that we were doing, and they asked us to replicate it for their My Brother's Keeper program. So we kind of partner with those two organizations, Jay-Z's and President Obama separately. And every year we do this exchange program where we pull about 10 to 12 students out of the US. We fly them to the UK. They work with a similar amount of students. It blossoms a little bit more in the UK because we have a few more contacts. And we end up impacting roughly about kind of between 50 up to about 30 students on each of those exchange. For the last maybe like 5 or 6 years, bar the COVID years, we've worked with a few brands. So last year we worked with Nestle and Kit Kat. The year before that, we worked with Brand Jordan, and I'll talk about the Brand Jordan one because that was a really impressive one. We worked with Brand Jordan, and we created this just a simple brief. How does culture influence basketball? Whether that's art, whether that's music, whether that's fashion, and how does basketball influence culture? And they took that brief. We initially brought students out of Chicago, where the Obama Foundation brought them to the UK. They went and met basketball students with the Brixton Top Cats. They went to kind of looked at street art. And they had all of these different immersive experiences in London. We took them back to Chicago. All in this time, they're starting to ideate ideas. They're thinking of strategic ideas of what they're learning, what they're hearing, what they're seeing, and they're documenting that. And then they did a similar thing in Chicago, where they got to meet the Chicago Bulls. They got to see the behind the scenes of the President Obama Center that they're building there. And they got to have some real kind of on the street cultural experiences in Chicago. And they wrapped that all up in the creative project. And they brought that to life in the form of a basketball jersey and some shorts with some point of sale touch points and pop-up ideas. And they got to present that back to Brand Jordan, Nike execs, some of the senior leadership at...
What an opportunity, man.
Yeah, what an opportunity. Senior leadership at the Obama Foundation. And on that call was Tinker Hatfield. And if you're a big trainer head or a sneakerhead in the US, this is the guy behind some of those key Brand Jordans. We're talking about Jordan 3, 4, 5, behind the Air Max 1s, 95s, 97s. And we also had Howard White. So Howard White is the person who helped kind of nurture the relationship between Nike and Brand Jordan in those early days. He's played by Chris Tucker in the Air movie that I'm sure you've all seen. Mm-hmm. So we have these two big kind of like cultural juggernauts on the call, and Tinker Hatfield's quite on the call. And at the end, he says, "My first comment is going to be, this is the best presentation I've ever seen. Not by any students, ever. Any creative presentation I've ever had." So to hear that feedback from such a cultural juggernaut who has been a part of streetwear culture for so long was massive. And it didn't end there. So Brand Jordan Europe were also knew about the project we were doing. They wanted to see the results. They saw the work. They had a pop-up event happening in October for Black History Month with Colin Kaepernick, who was going to be there hosting the event. And they asked to replicate their designs, light for light. They were going to change one thing. They were doing a basketball event for Black History Month, sponsored by Nike. They were bringing teams out of France and the UK to kind of a female team and a male team to have this basketball. It was surrounded by music. They had pop-up events happening, customizations events. And they said, this is really going to elevate our event if we could use your work. They then paid the students for the work that they did. They invited the students back to the event. They decorated all of the basketball courts with all their iconography. They recreated the basketball jerseys and shorts. They created custom T-shirt stations where they were heat pressing their designs onto the shirts over this 3-day event. The students got to then do a Q&A talking about their experience on this exchange program we had done. So again, we got to fly the US students back to the UK. The UK students got to experience that. And then it didn't end there, because then NBC in the US got wind of what we were doing, and they were doing a 30-minute special during Black History Month in 2023. And they said, can we air your behind the scenes documentation that you do nationwide across the US? So that exposure got amplified for the students that got to work on this particular exchange. We ended up hiring for our London student, one of the students from that exchange as well. And then the work that got shown for NBC got nominated and shortlisted for 2 regional Emmys in Chicago in the Midwest. So yeah, again, the students had to kind of now get dressed up in kind of suits and ties and their best frocks, go back to Chicago to attend a gala event to see if they had won an Emmy for the work they had done. Which was
so impressive, that is.
Mind-blowing. So that all to say, and that the amazing heights that we've been able to do over the last couple of years, working with the likes of Nestle, Jordan, Ford. Next year, we're going to be working with GM, one of GM's brands. What's at the roots of what we're doing is it's really just planting the seed in their mind and saying that they deserve to be in these rooms, they deserve to be in this industry, and we're here to showcase them that, through creativity and this journey, this creative journey they're on, that they can make they can make it basically. They can become the next designers, the next innovators, the next
100%, because creative, especially in marginal communities, they don't have those opportunities. Even like back in your days and back in these days. So someone has to allow that to happen, right? To give them
yeah,
the stage to shine. But John, I want to go one level deeper. Like this was an amazing journey of authenticity, spontaneity, creativity, and just finding a way to belong, and generally culture. And I want you to explain a bit more why now culture is so important for brands, why brands need to be, as you said in your website, street savvy.
yeah,
Like, because that you got a long journey that actually it's culminating in a moment of brands where they
Mm.
really need that. And
yeah.
I want you to tap into that because that's super important.
I'll probably go back to our initial point right at the beginning, that first experience of both with Niners, two students at Street Eyes, being kind of hyper local in the street, absorbing what was going on at that time,
Yeah.
bring that to life through some kind of expression, through messaging, through imagery, and then putting that out there for people to interact with. And it was that tapping into that local culture, I think, is what has kind of come full 360 now, because
Exactly.
I think brands are now understanding they need to get under the skin of culture. They need to look into the margins and understand what's happening, what conversations are happening.
Today.
Yeah, it's like what triggers, like what levers, like what's there that an outsider, right? And I'm using that word, like, won't understand. Like, that won't trigger. It won't understand. And I think
And
that's
it's fascinating how from outsider 22 years ago, now you're actually at the fucking center of it.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And
Mm.
so yeah, we that experience is now, we've almost like packaged that up, and that's our offering. We can lean into our own experiences, and we can continue to lean into the margins and find those stories. And it's not just about finding those stories; it's about how you translate those stories and bring them into the center, and do it in an authentic way, do it in a respectful way, and do it in a way where, again, your mind is already in tune, that you're already thinking about, okay, great, I've met someone over there, I've met someone who's doing something amazing. How do we amplify that and package that and bring that into the center, and not just like take what they're doing and bring them into the center with it, and express that, whether that's strategically working with someone who's kind of really lives and breathes that culture from a tone of voice point of view, from a ideas point of view, from an innovation point of view, artists, illustrators, typographers, designers, anyone who's expressing themselves creatively. How can you kind of bring that and amplify that and give them a platform to, one, get a nice paycheck, but also a great portfolio piece, and great connections now in this kind of that's going to help amplify and project their hopefully their career path as well. So we lean into that. We're always keeping an eye on that. We're tapping into that, and we're helping our brands kind of tap into that as well.
But it's such a delicate step in between being authentic and being bullshit. And I don't know why Kylie Jenner and Pepsi came into mind immediately.
Yes.
It's true though,
isn't it?
Yeah,
it's true. Like you have 20 past years of experience of what actually is happening in the street, what culture is. But like the other side of the coin, it's forcing it into brands and being completely inauthentic. And people are so savvy and so smart, they can smell it a miles away.
Just miles away.
Yeah. I think, and I'll give you an example on a project. I'll give you an example of a project we worked on, where at the end of the day, when you bring it to the center, there's a great story to tell. But where I think it clicks in brands' minds is when it delivers results.
Oh, when it returns.
Yeah,
sure. I mean, the CEOs are there for that, isn't it? We have shareholders and we have share price, right? Ultimately, I mean, no matter what, isn't it? It always goes back to that.
It goes back to that, and we've got a great case study. We did a project. We got a couple of case studies, but I'll focus on one. We got a project we did for Smirnoff. So they had found a liquid, a spicy tamarind liquid, which was tapping into a cultural, a cultural moment or a cultural experience, and they wanted us to come in and tell a story about it. So we said, okay, we'll give you a scope of work, but it means part of their scope of work means it's a bit of an investment from you guys. You've tapped into something great, but now you need to kind of amplify that story and package that story, which is going to resonate. And we need to, to really understand it. We need to be boots on the ground. We need to kind of have a lived experience to bring this story to life. So, we tapped into the Day of the Dead. Spicy tamarind. Tamarind is an ingredient which is kind of linked into specific cultures: the Caribbean culture, the African culture, and also the Mexican culture and South American culture. So they knew they wanted to launch something around the limited edition projects around the Day of the Dead. So we're like, let's send the crew down into Mexico and experience the Day of the Dead. Let's go into their homes. Let's speak to those authentic people. We ended up, celebrating, worshiping their ancestors in a cemetery overnight and partying with them. We ended up sitting down in their homes and hearing their stories, hearing them talk about their ancestors, eating the food and having home cooked meals with them, seeing all of the visual vernacular within their four walls. And that we took that experience and those insights and we then brought them back to New York. But again, it wasn't about like, okay, we're just almost like a drop in the ocean moments, we're going to absorb it and then take it and then exploit it. We got back to New York and we were like, look at these amazing stories. They just naturally start to form territories.
Yeah.
So here's like, there was such an abundance of lived experiences that we need to narrow down to 2 or 3 ways in here. And we've got like 8 to 10. So we really kind of spent time with it. Lucky enough, we had some Mexican designers that were a part of Vault 49's makeup and our client service team. So we really start tap into it. But let's make sure we go back into Mexico and really kind of go back and forth. Like, we're thinking about this. Does this feel authentic? So making that connection and that dialogue, continue that through the whole journey, but also having the Mexican typographers, having the Mexican illustrators and the Mexican thinkers behind it, continuously feeding into it. Well, not just them. We also had our US people, we had our English people also feeding into it as well and building it.
Different perspectives from different angles, and that's something that you can't do reading books. You got to live that.
Or asking ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And to land the plane, what landed the plane for the clients was when this launched, the liquid sold out literally before the event was even over. It was so successful. They said, well, let's launch it across key markets across South America. So they launched it in Colombia, Brazil, and Argentina. Sold out there. It was like, we were onto something here. Let's now launch this in North America. It was the fastest growing flavored vodka liquid in North America. They then launched it in Canada. We did a redesign to that because there was a second generation Indian community in Canada that again tap into that spicy tamarind flavor. But they're now launching it globally. It's now a permanent SKU. And it's now, as of last year, I believe, it's the most successful. So Diageo are the umbrella company across Guinness, Smirnoff, so on and so forth. It's the most successful innovation across all Diageo brands ever. And I think it goes back to that, what we talked about. It goes back to that moment of getting hyper-local, tapping into local cultures in an authentic way. Because here's Smirnoff trying to go into Mexico, big brand into Mexico and stand up authentically. You can't just do that unless you really collaborate and really kind of spend some time connecting in an authentic way and in a respectful way, and then bring that journey to life.
And especially
what's funny, taking you, but going back to the start of what you were doing as local artists, you would never have got that from someone in one of those suits in the marketing rooms. It has to come from the streets. Sorry, Wes or Martin, were you going to say something?
Martin's got a question. I want to kind of close this bit. Let Martin go.
No, it wasn't the question. It was just to build up on the story. I think it's wonderful. It's like it's all coming together. It's all coming together, right? All your experience and your stories, and like especially for new products and innovative products, you get one shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you fuck up with the culture and local culture and local heritage, you're gone.
Yeah.
Mm.
Exactly.
No matter how big your brand, that new product that you want to tap into the market, that's gone.
Brands, are you listening out there? Are you listening?
So what I want to do is wrap this up a bit, JG. Is like I always like to kind of ask our guests, like, if you could summarize this into a little hack, right, about how being an outsider. If you see yourself as an outsider, how do you turn that into a superpower?
Yeah, good question.
Gosh,
It can be
it's only
pretty
layers to it.
right?
If I was to distill it down to a few things, again, it's about, if I talk about my lived experience, it's about being brave, putting yourself out there. It's having that, aligning that hustle with your passion. And I think that just kind of, it leads to opportunities, it leads to conversations, it leads to creating your own luck. And that's what, and it leads to something that we reach, tapped into something that can be an authentic story and something you can really kind of build a brand around. You know, we have this authentic story of starting off as street artists and evolving out of that, and it's what stands us apart from our competitors. You know, there's not many other agencies that have been on the journey that we've been on who can kind of have that same story or can kind of compete, and it allows us to kind of scope creep. It allows us, so when we're not necessarily the agency of record on the brand, because we offer and do and think so differently, and we've continued that red thread. If you ever kind of dig into the makeup of Vault 49, we still have like graffiti artists, we still have muralists. Everyone who comes to work for Vault 49 because of how Vault 49 was founded learns how to screen print. We have I look to my right and there's a screen print press over there.
I remember coming to your offices and seeing like those old like drying racks that we used to have.
Yeah, they're just to the right of me. There's like there's about 50 spray cans. There's a screen print bed. There's an exposure unit. There's a washout booth. There's letterpress equipment. There's so much of that at the heart of what we do.
It's the DNA of you guys, isn't it?
It's the DNA, and it's helping us. Probably, I'm hoping it's going to help us actually go through this journey of AI and just be something that is still about real, that has that humanity behind it, has that human story and that human touch point.
But we live in a society that just wants us to put in boxes, isn't it? And I'm thinking about our kids as well. So how do you personally manage that? And I know myself as well. Like I wasted most of my youth and my younger age not wanted to be an immigrant from a mixed background and just wanted to be a normal person trying to fit in a box. And later on I understood how much that was my superpower. But I see that happening again. Like we want to have 3 boxes and all the fucking humanity needs to fit into these 3 boxes.
True though.
So how do we manage that? How do we inspire others to learn from that? Because it is scary.
Yeah.
Right? Because everyone is doing that, and that is easy for me to do as well.
I think I look at it through 2 lenses. One of, being from a minority, whether that's kind of like, being a female, being a someone with disabilities, being a person of color, whatever it is. I feel like we're in a time where there's more openness, there's more acceptedness to the idea of difference. There's a lot more platforms that you could utilize, and we, speaking to maybe myself, Martin, I'm hearing you're a little bit younger than us. Maybe Ash and Wes, we're a little bit closer. We almost had to conform a little bit more as well. Like I was, we came up, and my journey through the agency was, I remember our offering maybe 6 to 8 years ago was, we are a jack of all trades, we can do it all for you. And we were struggling to get clients. They were like, yeah, but we've got this packaging agency that do it over here. We've got this above the line agency that do this, or this rollout below the line agency that do all of that over here, and they're experts at all of that. So where do you fit into that? And we struggled with that, and we kind of got into the kind of the mindset of you need to hone in your craft. But I'm learning so much from the young people now. Like I'm actually, they're teaching me so much about no, creativity now in this current time isn't one thing. I can, and I'll mirror this back to you guys as your journey as creatives and strategists. And Wes, I know your journey. We've known each other for decades. You were the little cheeky chap behind FUBU for many years, kind of working.
Still cheeky.
And it still is, right? And now you're like a strategist, and now you're like a podcast platform, which is an amazing platform because it allows someone like me who came from the margins to be my authentic self in your space. And I love that you guys are actually blurring the lines a little bit because you're having some big players and some unknown players, and you're blurring that.
I think it comes back to what you said. It's about talent. It's about the people that are special. And we've all got journeys that we want to pull people out that's influenced us or inspired us, or and
I'm inspiring from the young. The young people are doing things differently. They're not. They're like one day they're a podcast, one day they're an influencer, the next minute they're an illustrator.
It's so fast.
You meet them in a month's time. They've like something new, and they're a strategist. Like they're breaking down these barriers more so than what I was doing when I was their age.
It's interesting to hear you say, like, we were always forced to be pigeonholed, right? Every career advisor I had, every recruiter I met, it's like, but we can't place you because you do this, you do that. Like my background, me, like me, fashion to whatever, to music to strategy to design agency. And I got back to the UK, no one could place me. Like what? And I was like, well, why? Like I can do that. Yeah. And a bit like you said, like, but we need to put you in this box because I need to make sure that if I'm going to put you forward as a recruiter, I'm going to get a return. Right. That's all what it was. Numbers. Like I was more of a risk because I wouldn't get across the line. So therefore they're going to put all their effort into me, and I won't make them any money. And I called them out on it. I was like, all right, so I'll lie on my resume. Whatever you need me to do. Right. Oh no. But no. I was just like, well, how do I win? How do I win this game? You know what I mean? Like
exactly. And then I'll just double down on the other part of that. If you come from that minority background as well, and this is less of a bit of advice or a viewpoint from what I've seen working on the swap. I also do a lot of work. I talked about the One School. I do a lot of work in those spaces. We're finding ourselves in a time where brands and agencies are a lot more receptive, and they understand that they need to diversify, and they're inviting people into those spaces. But they need to understand it's also a journey. It's not about just kind of like putting a bottom on a seat. It's also about, well, how are you gonna guide them through that journey? Because a lot of the time, especially from a US point of view, they haven't gone through the educational process. Over here, like the fees are insane. Like to go from the journey of like you come out the other end and you're 300 to 400K in debt. So a lot of them are choosing different ways. They're teaching themselves. They're latching onto mentors and getting advice, and they're
hustling.
They're hustling, right? So when you do invite them into those spaces, you take that leap. Make sure you understand it's a bit of a journey, and there's a bit of hand holding about you. You bring junior, but really start to help them and carve a path for them and see like, this is how you're going to go to that next step. It's not about just kind of getting them in at that entry point, because they're going to get frustrated and you're going to get frustrated if you.
Well, it'll do more damage than good, wouldn't it?
Exactly. And that's what I'm hearing now about post. I say BLM is still now, but people who have given those opportunities are now coming like, well, now I'm here. Now I'm seeing behind the curtain. I'm not really seeing the full story, which I thought it was going to be. And they're jumping out because they don't feel like they're getting the support. So, there's a lot of learning that we still need to go through. But the good thing is, that the reception, the door is starting to be opened. We just need to kind of continue with this journey, supporting people.
Yeah. And I think to add to that, John, like just understand that like it is a journey. It doesn't happen overnight, and just encouraging and believing in yourself to stay true and to stay humble and honest to yourself. Like if it's not working now, I don't mean to say it's not going to work tomorrow. Like the people I mentor,
100%.
Just anchor down, keep doing what you do. Eventually, it'll break. If it's going to break, it'll break. You know what I mean? Like,
it might take years, you know.
Yeah, totally, 100%. I mean, I think all of us sat on this screen now. We've all been there. We're all still doing it. We're all still finding it. And I'm finding more and more now through the way of technology, through the way of mindset and behavior, as in like, you know, fabricating authenticity, just to dig my heels in more is paying off. Is paying off. Like, I don't care. I mean, I do care. I still get imposter. I still wake up some days and be like, shit, I need to do X, Y, Z, or I've got this person to watch out for, or do that. But I find the more I can just be myself, talk openly, and not get like frowned upon for being that, I think the more that allows us to be diverse in many ways, in culture, in language, in approach, in acceptance, in regions, whatever it is. And then you get to a level where then people respect you for that, and at that point is when it starts to work. And I think
I agree.
Yeah, 100%. It's like when we're talking about personal branding, right? It's about personal and branding, right? And personal is about being yourself, and because yourself is unique, because everyone else is taken, that you're also doing branding, which branding is about differentiation. But it's a journey. For me, it took me 20 odd years to start to appreciate that, you know. And as Wes is saying, you know,
and it doesn't end as well.
It does not end. It does not end. But it's much cheaper on your mental health as a personal brand being yourself, and it's much cheaper on your actual budget as a brand also being yourself, because branding is not a fucking Halloween costume that you choose to pick up, right? There is only as much as you can fake it.
Yeah, agreed.
My dad always said this to me. I came back from America the first time, and I was sat in the house, and I was all kind of bent out of shape about, you know, why things weren't going my way. And he was like, first, like, stop trying to do everything for everyone else. Do it for yourself. And he said, secondly,
why are you still struggling with that?
And he said, I am still, well, I am 40, 45. And secondly, he said, stop trying to control the things you can't and control the things you can. And that still fucking rings true to me now. Like, it's hard to let go, but when you can start controlling the bit that could control the bit you can't control, then you're in control, right? And that's a bit of a weird one, and I think that's how we have to end. Like, he's just an outsider is an analogy of being yourself and sticking true to it, right? And eventually it'll pay off.
Yeah, and I fully align with that. And now's probably the best time to be an outsider, because you're going to bring something different to the table.
That you can't prompt, that you can't type, you know, you can't, and that's the way you bring
that you cannot prompt
to life. You know?
I'm gonna change the YouTube episode once it's published to "Now is the best time to be an outsider." That's a brilliant one.
Jesus.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
John, we're always closing with the segment that Ash loves, which is, do you have any do you have any questions for us?
Yeah. Especially for Ash. He always,
and it can't be what song do you sing in the shower?
Why? Because I like that.
No. It can be anything you want.
I've got one. If there was an album that best described you, it could be the artwork cover, it could be the name of the album, it could be the story that's told, the journey within that album.
Can I go first?
Yes.
Can I go first? It's Exodus by Bob Marley.
Mate, I would have never put that in you. I'm not even time.
Mine has to be Wu-Tang, 36 Chambers, just because it was when Nas was the first one that got into it, but then like Wu-Tang, it just changed the game, and for me it was like this different thing, and it like a really
both albums changed the game actually so far.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Wes?
Change a way of life, really.
Wes is struggling. I know Wes is struggling with this question.
Because my one is, it's got many connotations. It's my therapy. It's not what you're going to expect. But D'Angelo Voodoo is kind of...
Oh, you little romantic.
Literally...
Man, I want to hug you right now.
Let's be like,
together
any scenario puts me in a positive way, gets me, honestly, if I cook, Voodoo goes on, like, without control. Like, if I work late, it's just been one of them things. Or like, Naughty by Nature, John Barry used to be another album that I actually loved. But Woo is my go-get. Like, that would be my alarm clock.
So let's end on you, John.
Exactly.
What's yours?
Gosh, yeah, I would cheat, to be honest. God, I'll give you a day in the.
Your playlist.
I answered this question, the same question the other day, but I'll give you let's say in the morning.
No, mate. You're making it easy for yourself. No, fuck that. No.
I'm gonna go Ash's.
I want one.
Ash touched on it. Illmatic Nas.
Yes.
Ooh.
It felt like it just cut through. It was so tapped into kind of street culture, what was happening in New York.
Yeah.
So young, so authentic, so real.
Just on that topic, him and Premier are releasing an album that is coming out soon. I can't wait.
Yes. Oh man, that collabo. Have you guys actually one album from a UK point of view that gives me the Illmatic feeling is Bashi's latest album.
I've not heard it all. Like,
man, he talks about that real, if being from the UK, it's obviously through his lens, of like from Caribbean experience, but navigating UK culture, street culture, he just really kind of like captures it in the same way that Illmatic, as an outsider looking into the New York experience.
Those stories, they just transport you. You feel it. You experience that emotionally, and it's done so well.
Yeah, Being Poor is expensive by Bashi is a good album that taps into.
Guys, makes me think that we need to ask to our guest one song, and then we do a yearly playlist.
Yeah,
good idea.
We did that for a time once. We had a menopausal brand, and when we presented it back, we put a playlist on that was all about women empowerment, and we just played it in the background and didn't tell them. It was just amazing.
Yeah, but they figured it out, didn't they?
Yeah, eventually they were like, "Oh, there's a theme here."
It wasn't only about women empowerment. It was about changes as well. I remember there was changes from Tupac in it as well.
Yeah. I love the music, actually, the intro music to the Watercooler as well.
Yeah, me too. It always gets me. That was Ash.
Don't give him any creds.
Yeah, actually, on YouTube, I noticed when it goes live, it pulls out who it's from, and it is licensed through the Epidemic Sounds, one of those, but it's licensed and it's marked someone. So yeah, check that out. But listen, John, thanks so much.
We've got to go. It's been.
We run over 14 minutes, but I think we could run over a couple of days actually.
I'm telling you, February, mark the diaries,
We'll have a part 2 in February. I love that.
Honestly,
yeah. So they can follow. People can follow you on.
Yeah, tell us where.
Instagram. LinkedIn, just under my name, John Glasgow, or follow the company Vault 49. Same on pretty much across all of the socials. Vault 49 on Instagram. Please reach out, see what we're about, see what we're up to. And let's start a conversation. Yeah, I saw lots of interesting comments.
Yeah,
in the chat.
There's a few in there.
Smart people today here. Huh?
And if you could, John, go in the chat and just put the information about, the foundation and how people can listen in can actually get involved in that and put themselves forward. Yeah.
Even your approach page on the website, it's awesome. I was going through it before. It's spot on.
Man.
Definitely an authentic brand.
Vault 49 is a conduit into all of the socials as well, so that's probably the best place to start.
Cool, man.
Thanks, buddy. Have a good day and a good weekend.
Love you, man.
See you later, John.
Yes, love you too.
Peace.
Ciao.
I think we did it again.
Good.
That was the longest episode. I didn't even realize we were going to the end of it.
Yeah, man.
But thanks everyone. Thanks for turning up.
Mark's comment. The album. Remember, you're a Womble.
Right. That's how we should end.
2 weeks.
Thanks, Mark.
See you soon.
Yeah. Take care, guys.